Today we're going to explain why old people always think their performance was way better than it was, and why it gets worse with age, and how this can affect how we think about some of the all-time greats in sports and how we can solve this. So let's think about it like this. We have a y-axis of performance, an x-axis of time. We have a real performance. So that is the real outcome right here. But we have to introduce something called a memory bias. We'll call it MB, and this memory bias is a constant. It always exists, and we're going to express that as a specific angle because we're going to use trigonometry to figure this out. And we're going to say that's 30 degrees. If you had zero memory bias, it would be 0 degrees. So regardless of what time period it is, you would always remember the real performance. But guess what? Very rarely is it 0 degrees. No one ever thinks like that. So we're going to apply a constant bias of 30 degrees. So let's say we are out 5 years, just randomly. So we know one leg of our triangle, that is 5. We have our hypotenuse here, which we don't necessarily know, but we know our constant is 30 degrees. So we're trying to figure out the y here. Remember, this is the real value x, and then we have the biased value that we'll talk about here, which is that y. I'm going to use my handy dandy calculator to figure that out. So remember, our leg here, we can call that b, is going to be 5. Our angle A right here is 30 degrees. And so that gives our side over here, we'll just say 2.887. All right. So what happens is we get older, this time variable changes, but this is a constant over here. So that constant memory bias is always going to be 30 degrees. Let's say we're now 15 years removed. We're going to draw another triangle up here, 30 degrees, same angle. Let's apply this again. So instead of 5, we have 15 as that bottom leg. That makes this y, which was once 2.88, now it's going to be 8.66. So we can see here we have a memory bias that is increasing how well we performed. And this is all due to the fact that we have this memory bias constant of 30 degrees. So even though the real performance is right here, which is initially that x value right here, as time goes by, we start to remember things differently, even though we're not changing how we actually remember it, in the sense that we're not adding a new bias to it. That degree of bias is always 30 degrees, but as we get older, the magnitude changes. And so this is why old people always think they played better and better as the years go by. The older the person you meet, the more they benched press when they were 20 years old, and the more points they scored in high school. They're not changing their rate of their angle of bias. That's constant. They're just getting older, and it happens to be a process that takes place naturally.